Imagine this. A man so wealthy that even the keys to his treasure vaults were too heavy for strong men to carry. A man whose palaces shimmered with gold. A man known among the children of Israel as the richest of them all. Powerful, admired, envied. But then, one day, the ground beneath him began to shake. The earth opened its mouth. And that man, his palace, his wealth, his pride, all of it was swallowed whole. No rescue came. No fortune could save him. No voice answered his cries. This is the story of Qarun. In the Qur'an, in Surah Al-Qasas, God recounts the story of Qarun. Qarun was from among the children of Israel. According to some classical scholars, he was a close relative of Prophet Moses, even described as his cousin. This was a time when the children of Israel were emerging from the oppression of Pharaoh. Moses was guiding his people with a divine message, leading them towards faith, freedom, and moral responsibility. But Qarun chose a different path, the path of wealth, the path of pride, and the outcome of that path will become a lesson preserved for generations. This is Egypt, ancient Egypt, a civilization carved from heat and stone, a land where power was visible, authority was unquestioned, and rulers believed themselves divine. Monumental structures pierced the sky, symbols of dominance and permanence. Along the Nile, life flourished, crops grew, trade expanded, wealth accumulated. But beneath the grandeur of empire, another story unfolded. Not the story of a king, not the story of a tyrant seated on a throne. The story of a man born among the oppressed, a man who witnessed miracles, a man who rose to unimaginable wealth, a man whose name will become a warning repeated across centuries. His name was Qarun. He was not an outsider to revelation. He was not distant from prophecy. He belonged to the children of Israel, the very people who had seen divine signs with their own eyes. They had witnessed the sea split. They had seen Pharaoh fall. They followed Prophet Moses, peace be upon him. Some narrations describe Qarun as being related to Moses. Family, bloodline, same community, same message. But sharing a community does not guarantee sharing a heart. Guidance can be near, yet rejected. Qarun was blessed with extraordinary wealth, not modest prosperity, not comfortable living, overwhelming abundance. The Qur'an describes his fortune in a way that forces the imagination to stretch beyond limits. The keys to his treasuries alone were so heavy that a group of strong men could barely carry them. Not the treasure itself, not the vaults filled with gold, just the keys. Imagine what that means. In modern terms, picture the financial dominance of the most powerful billionaires. Global investments, vast real estate, liquid assets beyond calculation, political influence, social admiration. Multiply that scale. Qarun was not simply wealthy. He was untouchable. His name carried weight. His presence commanded attention. His resources granted him access to anything he desired. Wealth, in itself, is not condemned in Islam. Success is not sinful. Prosperity is not forbidden. But wealth is never neutral. It either humbles you or it hardens you. It either brings gratitude or it breeds arrogance. It reveals what already lives in the heart. At first, success feels like relief. The struggle softens. Stability arrives. Gratitude flows naturally. Then success begins to feel like achievement. Then identity. Then entitlement. You begin by saying, I am grateful for this opportunity. Later you say, I worked hard for this. Eventually you say, I deserve this. And finally, quietly, without noticing the shift, you say, I built this. That shift is subtle, but spiritually, it is massive. Modern culture celebrates the self-made narrative, the entrepreneur who built an empire from nothing, the executive who climbed the corporate ladder, the investor who mastered the market. Effort is real. Discipline is real. Strategy matters. But here is a deeper question. Who gave you the ability to think strategically? Who gave you the health to endure long nights? Who positioned you in the right place at the right time? Who created the system you navigated? In the Islamic worldview, even your capacity to earn is a gift. Qarun began to forget that. He saw his intelligence. He saw his management skills. He saw his financial acumen. He stopped seeing the provider behind it all. Arrogance rarely arrives loudly. It grows quietly, like rust spreading beneath polished metal. From the outside, everything shines. Inside, corrosion advances. Qarun began to view his wealth not as a trust, but as validation. Validation of his superiority. Validation of his uniqueness. Validation that he was different, above others. The righteous among his people approached him. They did not attack him. They did not accuse him. They advised him gently. They told him to use what God had given him to seek the hereafter. They reminded him not to forget his share of this world, but also not to let this world consume him. They urged him to do good as God had done good to him. They warned him not to spread corruption. They were not asking him to abandon wealth. They were asking him to reframe it, to see it as responsibility, to see it as temporary, to see it as a means, not an end. But pride resisted vice. And then Qarun said the words that would define his legacy. This wealth was given to me because of my knowledge. It was not a denial of God's existence. It was a denial of dependence. He shifted the source of credit from the Creator to himself. That moment changed everything. Knowledge is powerful. Knowledge builds civilizations. Knowledge creates innovation. Knowledge fuels economies. But knowledge without humility becomes a weapon against the soul. When knowledge leads to submission, it elevates a person. When knowledge leads to arrogance, it destroys them. Qarun's intellect may have been sharp. His financial systems may have been brilliant. But brilliance without gratitude is blindness. One day, he emerged before his people in full display of his wealth. Imagine the scene. Garments woven with threads of gold. Precious stones embedded in fabric. Servants surrounding him. Movement choreographed to impress. Wealth not hidden, but showcased. It was a statement, a declaration, a performance of superiority. Crowds gathered. Human nature responded predictably to visible success. Eyes widened. Whispers spread. Admiration mixed with envy. Some among the crowd said, "If only we had what Qarun has." They saw wealth as ultimate success. They equated possessions with value. They measured worth by display. But others, grounded in faith, said, "The reward of God is better for those who believe and do righteous deeds." Two mindsets stood side by side. One saw glitter. The other saw consequence. This division exists in every generation. Materialism versus meaning. Possession versus purpose. Luxury versus legacy. When wealth is displayed without humility, it generates comparison. Comparison breeds dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction breeds envy, and envy corrodes societies. Today, screens amplify this phenomenon. Social media broadcast curated lifestyles. Luxury becomes content. Success becomes spectacle. You are incomplete unless you have this. The message is constant. Qarun's parade was an ancient reflection of the same psychology. Look at me, admire me, desire what I possess. But admiration is unstable, and envy is volatile. Corruption does not always appear as violence. It does not always appear as crime. Sometimes corruption is internal, when wealth no longer circulates to those in need, when generosity fades, when influence becomes self-glorification, when gratitude disappears. That is corruption of the heart, and corruption of the heart eventually manifests in the world. Qarun believed his wealth secured him. He believed his influence protected him. He believed his assets insulated him from vulnerability. But wealth cannot negotiate with destiny. Power cannot override divine decree. History is filled with powerful individuals who believed they were untouchable until they weren't. There is a spiritual law embedded in Revelation. When arrogance reaches its peak, collapse approaches. It may not be immediate. It may not be predictable, but it is certain, because arrogance is, at its core, a challenge to divine authority. And divine authority is absolute. Pride isolates a person. It lifts them socially while separating them spiritually. Qarun stood surrounded by admiration. But spiritually, he was alone. He no longer saw himself as dependent. He saw himself as self-sufficient. And the illusion of self-sufficiency is the most dangerous illusion of all. Outwardly, nothing seemed unstable. His treasures were intact. His status was secure. His name carried influence. But internally, the foundation had cracked. When the internal structure collapses, the external structure cannot stand for long. The ground beneath Qarun had already begun to tremble, not physically, but spiritually. This is not merely an ancient narrative. It is a living pattern. Every era produces its Qaruns. Every society glorifies wealth. Every generation tempts individuals to claim full ownership of their success. The question remains timeless. Will prosperity increase humility or inflate ego? Will influence lead to service or to self-glorification? Will success deepen gratitude or erase it? Qarun still walked proudly. His wealth still glittered. His name still impressed. But the seed of arrogance had matured, and once arrogance matures, consequences follow. The earth was still. The sky was silent. But silence does not mean approval. It means waiting. Divine justice does not rush. It does not forget. And when it arrives with certainty. The rise had reached its height. The pride had been declared. The divide among the people had been exposed. And soon, the illusion of permanence would shatter. The man who believed his knowledge made him untouchable was about to discover a truth no wealth can prevent. Nothing stands above the will of God. The city had heard the rumors. Whispers moved through markets. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Traders leaned across wooden stalls and spoke in lowered voices. Servants hurried through narrow streets carrying news before their masters even asked for it. Qarun was coming out. Not privately, not quietly, publicly, deliberately. The air itself felt different that morning. Anticipation hovered over the city like heat rising from stone. The sun climbed higher, pouring light across rooftops and alleyways, illuminating society already fascinated by power. Doors opened, balconies filled. Children were lifted onto shoulders. Everyone wanted to see him, because wealth does not simply exist. It performs, and today, Qarun would perform. From the gates of his estate, movement began. First came the servants, arranged with precision, robes immaculate, faces composed. Behind them, guards in polished armor reflected sunlight in blinding flashes. Then chests appeared, carried carefully, deliberately, heavy with treasure. Gold does not whisper. It gleams. It commands attention. And when the chariot finally emerged, adorned in decoration fit for royalty, the crowd inhaled as one. This was not modest success. This was spectacle. This was a statement. Qarun sat elevated, garments woven with threads that caught the light at every angle. Jewelry rested across his chest. Rings reflected brilliance with every subtle movement of his hand. He did not hide. He displayed. The procession moved slowly, intentionally. Enough time for every eye to witness. Enough time for every heart to react. And hearts did react. Some stared in awe. Their eyes followed every movement, absorbing the glitter, calculating the difference between their lives and his. Desire was born in that moment. If only we had what he has. It was not spoken once. It was repeated, whispered between friends, muttered under breath, echoed in thought. Comparison began instantly. His garments versus their garments. His chariot versus their sandals. His estate versus their homes. Envy does not need instruction. It arises naturally when wealth is displayed without humility. The human mind is wired to compare, to measure status, to evaluate position within a hierarchy. And Qarun's parade established a hierarchy visibly. He was above. They were below. The spectacle intensified. Servants opened chests briefly as if to confirm their contents. Gold shimmered like liquid fire. Precious stones reflected fragmented sunlight into the faces of onlookers. Some felt admiration. Others felt something heavier, insecurity, because visible luxury does something subtle. It suggests that worth can be measured by possession. And when worth is measured materially, those with less feel diminished. Qarun understood the psychology. Power is reinforced when others feel small. He did not need to speak. The parade spoke for him. I have succeeded. I am elevated. I am beyond you. But not everyone was hypnotized. Among the crowd stood individuals whose hearts were anchored differently. They observed the same procession. They saw the same gold. They witnessed the same grandeur. Yet their response diverged completely. They said quietly, with conviction, the reward of God is better for those who believe and act righteously. Their words were not loud, but they were grounded. They understood something the dazzled crowd did not. Wealth shines today. Accountability arrives tomorrow. The divide in the crowd was not economic. It was spiritual. One group measured success by what they could see. The other measured success by what awaited beyond sight. This division defines every society. Material success versus eternal success. Temporary admiration versus lasting reward. The parade continued. Music echoed against stone walls. The rhythm of footsteps synchronized with drum beats. Children ran alongside briefly before being pulled back by parents. Qarun's posture remained firm, elevated, controlled. Inside, pride expanded. Public admiration is intoxicating. When thousands of eyes look at you with awe, something shifts internally. Confidence morphs into superiority. Superiority morphs into entitlement. And entitlement silences humility. The righteous had already warned him. Use your wealth for good. Remember its source. Do not spread corruption. But in this moment, surrounded by spectacle, those words felt distant, because praise is louder than advice. As the procession reached the central square, the crowd thickened. Merchants abandoned stalls entirely. Workers paused their labor. Even those who had no interest found themselves drawn into the current of fascination. Wealth exerts gravitational pull. It bends attention toward itself. And Qarun absorbed it all. He saw longing in their eyes. He saw admiration. He saw desire. And each glance fed his certainty. This wealth was given to me because of my knowledge. That statement echoed within him again, not as a defense now, but as affirmation. He believed it completely. He believed his intelligence distinguished him, that his strategic mind separated him from the ordinary. He forgot that intelligence itself is granted. He forgot that opportunity is designed. He forgot that timing is orchestrated. Arrogance narrows perspective. It shrinks awareness until only the self remains visible. The parade eventually slowed, then paused. For a moment, silence fell as Qarun surveyed the crowd. And in that silence, something unseen shifted. Not in the streets, in the unseen realm. Divine justice does not interrupt immediately. It allows moments to unfold fully. It allows pride to peak. It allows arrogance to declare itself publicly. Because when correction comes, it must be undeniable. The crowd dispersed slowly after the spectacle concluded. But the emotional impact lingered. In homes that evening, conversations continued. If only we had what he has. If only we were blessed like that. Comparison evolved into dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction into resentment. Society subtly tilted. Extreme wealth displayed without responsibility destabilizes communities. When admiration is directed toward excess rather than virtue, values begin to shift. Young minds begin redefining success. Not by character, not by service, but by spectacle. And spectacle fades quickly. Inside his palace, Qarun removed the outer garments of the parade. Servants bowed and withdrew. Torches flickered against high stone walls. He stood alone for a moment in a hall built from wealth beyond calculation. Massive columns rose toward ceilings adorned with intricate detail. Floors reflected polished perfection. Chests lined the walls like trophies. He felt powerful, untouchable, secure. But security built on illusion is fragile. Outside, the night air cooled the city. Stars appeared one by one. The same sky that covered the wealthy covered the poor. The same stars that witnessed gratitude witnessed arrogance. In the quiet of night, subtle tremors of consequence moved closer. Not physical tremors. Not yet. Spiritual ones. When arrogance reaches its height, it disturbs balance. And the universe, by divine command, restores balance. Qarun slept that night confident. He did not sense vulnerability. He did not imagine reversal. Why would he? His wealth was stable. His influence intact. His image admired. He had convinced himself that permanence was possible. But permanence belongs to none but God. History has shown repeatedly that public arrogance accelerates downfall. Empires have collapsed at their peak. Corporations have crumbled after record profits. Leaders have fallen days after triumphant speeches. Because human control is always partial. Divine control is absolute. Morning would come again, but it would not be like the morning of the parade. The crowd's envy had exposed societal weakness. Qarun's pride had exposed spiritual decay, and heaven had recorded it all. The illusion of invincibility was reaching its climax, and when illusion reaches its climax, reality intervenes. The earth remained still, but not indifferent. The sky remained silent, but not unaware. Everything was moving toward a moment that would redefine power, a moment that would expose fragility, a moment when wealth, status, and pride would face something no treasure can bribe. Because when divine justice responds, it does not negotiate, and the ground beneath Qarun's palace had already begun waiting. The night fell heavier than usual. The air was still, but not peaceful. There was a weight pressing against the unseen, something building beyond human perception. Inside his palace, Qarun rested beneath carved ceilings and guarded doors. The torches flickered along walls layered with wealth. Gold reflected light in soft pulses, as if breathing. He felt secure. Why wouldn't he? His vaults were full. His name carried influence. His power had been displayed publicly. No army threatened him. No rival challenged him. No rebellion stirred at his gates. Everything appeared stable. But divine justice does not require visible warning. It does not announce itself with negotiation. It arrived when arrogance matures. Morning broke slowly. The city stirred once more. Merchants reopened stalls. Laborers returned to work. Life resumed its rhythm. Qarun emerged again within his estate, confident, composed. Servants bowed. Orders were given. Movement flowed as usual. Nothing in his surroundings suggested what was about to unfold. And that is the nature of sudden judgment. It comes when certainty feels strongest. A subtle tremor moved beneath the earth, so faint that at first it felt imagined. A cup vibrated against a stone surface. A hanging lamp swayed almost imperceptibly. Servants paused. Brows furrowed. Then it stopped. Silence returned. Moments passed. Then it came again, stronger. The ground beneath the palace shifted with a low, unsettling groan, as though the earth itself exhaled. Outside, in the streets, people froze. Animals reacted first, restless, uneasy, sensing what humans could not yet comprehend. The tremor intensified. Walls shuddered. Dust fell from ceilings. Voices rose in confusion. And then the earth cracked, not at the edges of the city, not far beyond the walls. Beneath him, directly beneath Qarun's palace, stone fractured with violent force. Marble split apart as if it were brittle clay. Columns trembled, unable to anchor themselves. The ground opened. A roar erupted, deep, monstrous, primal. It was not the sound of battle. It was the sound of inevitability. Qarun stumbled as the floor beneath him shifted violently. Servants screamed. Treasure chests toppled, spilling gold across tilting surfaces. He reached for balance, but stability was gone. The palace that symbolized permanence now trembled like fragile wood. Outside, citizens watched in horror as a massive structure began to sink. Not collapse sideways, not burn, sink. The earth was swallowing it, slowly at first, then with accelerating force. Qarun's confidence shattered into panic. His voice rose, no longer commanding, but desperate. He called for help. He called for protection. He called for his wealth, as if it could anchor him. But gold cannot hold the ground together. Power cannot command the earth. The same earth he walked upon arrogantly was now rejecting him. Walls cracked open wider. Massive stones slid inward. Treasure poured downward like streams of molten metal disappearing into darkness. Dust filled the air, choking screams. The sound was overwhelming. Stone grinding against stone, with splintering, metal crashing, human voices crying out in terror. And still, the earth opened further. There was no army to defend him. No god could strike the ground into submission. No wealth could buy stability. The Qur'an describes it with devastating simplicity. We cause the earth to swallow him in his home. Not just him. His home, his symbol of pride, his fortress of wealth, all of it descended together. The crowd stood at a distance, paralyzed. Some who had envied him the day before now trembled uncontrollably. They watched as floors collapsed inward. They watched as golden beams tilted and vanished. They watched as the chest they once desired disappeared into an expanding void. Qarun clawed for survival, but there was nowhere to stand. Every surface betrayed him. Every foundation crumbled. This was not random disaster. This was precise, deliberate, measured. The earth closed over him, layer by layer, sound by sound, until the roaring subsided, until the dust settled, until silence returned. Where once stood a palace of dominance, there was now only disturbed earth. No gold shimmered. No banners waved. No guard stood watch. Just stillness. The same earth that had supported him without complaint had reclaimed him completely. And not a single coin followed him beyond that moment. Not a single jewel delayed the decree. Not a single admirer stepped forward to rescue him. The Qarun declares, there was no group to help him against God, nor was he able to defend himself. Powerless, utterly, completely, the crowd's reaction shifted from shock to realization. The same voices at once whispered, if only we had what he has, now spoke differently. They said, if God had not been gracious to us, he might have caused the earth to swallow us too. Perspective transformed instantly. What they once saw as blessing, they now saw as test. What they once admired, they now feared. The illusion had shattered. Wealth had not protected him. Status had not elevated him. Knowledge had not saved him. In one decisive moment, the hierarchy of society was overturned. The one who stood highest was now gone, and the lesson was carved into the memory of every witness. Arrogance invites exposure. Pride invites correction. Gratitude invites protection. The city remained quiet for days. People avoided the sight. Parents spoke in hushed tones to their children. The story spread beyond the streets, beyond the region, beyond the generation. Qarun's name would not be remembered for wealth. It would be remembered for downfall. Because when arrogance reaches its peak, divine justice responds not symbolically, but definitively. The earth had become a sign, a living reminder that permanence belongs to no human being, that control is temporary, that power is fragile, that every blessing is conditional upon humility. And somewhere beneath layers of soil and stone, the man who once declared, "This was given to me because of my knowledge," now faced a reality beyond all knowledge. A reality where wealth cannot negotiate, where pride cannot argue, where truth stands absolute. The spectacle of his rise had dazzled the city, but the spectacle of his fall reshaped it. And the lesson remains, echoing through centuries. Success without gratitude collapses. Power without humility sinks. And no fortress stands against the will of God. Silence. Then a low, solemn orchestral note fading into stillness. The dust had settled. The trembling had stopped. The air, once filled with screams and collapsing stone, was now quiet, almost unnaturally quiet. Where Qarun's palace once dominated the skyline, there remained nothing but disturbed earth. No towers, no banners, no glittering reflections of gold and sunlight. Just ground, plain, unremarkable, silent. People approached cautiously in the days that followed. Not too close, not immediately. Fear lingered in their steps. Children were held back. Voices were lowered. Eyes stared at the empty space where overwhelming wealth had once stood. It was difficult to comprehend. How could something so massive disappear so completely? How could gold vanish without trace? How could a man so powerful become so powerless in a single moment? The city had witnessed something irreversible. The illusion of permanence had shattered. Those who had once envied him now felt a different emotion. Relief. Relief that they were not him. Relief that the earth had not opened beneath their own homes. They began repeating words they had never spoken before with such sincerity. If God had not been gracious to us, we too could have been swallowed. That sentence carried awakening. Envy had turned into caution. Admiration had transformed into reflection. The event did more than remove a man. It reset values. In homes across the city, conversations changed tone. Parents who once pointed toward Qarun's estate as a symbol of success now spoke of it as a warning. Merchants reconsidered their intentions. Wealth was still desirable, but now it was frightening, because everyone understood something new. Wealth is not proof of approval. It can be a test, and tests can end suddenly. The righteous among them felt confirmation rather than surprise. They had warned him. They had advised him. They had reminded him that success without humility is dangerous. And now their words carried weight. But this was not a moment of celebration. It was a moment of gravity. Divine justice is not entertainment. It is instruction. The psychological impact on the community was profound. The crowd that once measured worth through possessions began questioning deeper meanings. What defines true success? What protects a person when systems collapse? What remains when wealth disappears? The answer was no longer theoretical. Faith, integrity, humility, these were the only assets untouched by the earth. Qarun's downfall exposed a universal pattern. When societies glorify material display above moral character, imbalance begins. When admiration is directed toward excess rather than virtue, corruption spreads quietly. But when a dramatic correction occurs, awareness returns, at least temporarily. History shows that communities awaken after catastrophe, but only for a time. The challenge is sustaining that awareness. In the days that followed, some people withdrew inwardly. They examined their own intentions. They asked themselves questions they had long avoided. If I were given that much wealth, would I remain humble? Would I remember the source? Would I share? Because Qarun's error was not wealth. It was arrogance. He did not simply possess riches. He attributed them solely to himself. That distinction matters. There is nothing wrong with building, nothing wrong with achieving, nothing wrong with expanding opportunity. But when gratitude disappears, protection disappears. This lesson extended beyond ancient streets. It echoed forward across centuries. Empires have collapsed after reaching their peak. Financial markets have crashed when confidence seemed strongest. Corporations have imploded days after record profits. The pattern repeats. Success convinces humans they are secure. Security breeds complacency. Complacency breeds arrogance. Arrogance invites correction. The earth swallowing Qarun was not random destruction. It was symbolic precision. The very ground he walked upon, confident and elevated, became the instrument of his fall. The foundation he assumed was stable proved conditional. Every foundation is conditional, except one: dependence on God. In the silence left behind, people began noticing subtleties they once ignored. The simple home still standing, the family still intact, the peace that did not require gold. The believers who remained calm during the spectacle now appeared wiser. Their earlier words gained authority. The reward of God is better. Those words were no longer abstract. They were anchored in visible reality. A generation grew up with a story burned into memory. They did not need elaborate explanations. They had seen the ground open. They had seen wealth disappear. They had seen power dissolve. And stories like this do not fade easily. They shape moral imagination. They influence behavior. They become reference points in times of temptation. Whenever someone began boasting, the name Qarun surfaced. Whenever envy crept into hearts, someone would remember the empty ground. The lesson outlived the palace. It outlived the gold. It outlived the man. Because divine lessons are designed to transcend time. But beyond societal impact, there was a deeper spiritual dimension. The event clarified a fundamental truth. Human control is limited. No matter how advanced the architecture, no matter how diversified the investments, no matter how admired the status, every human being stands on borrowed ground, breathing borrowed air, living within borrowed time. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to it, and ultimately, we return to it. Qarun's descent into the earth was dramatic, but every human being eventually descends, quietly, without spectacle, without parade. The difference lies in condition. Do we descend with arrogance, or with humility? Do we descend attached to illusion, or anchored in faith? The aftermath forced people to confront mortality in a way comfort often prevents. When everything seems stable, death feels distant. When foundations crack, vulnerability becomes visible. The city became more reflective. At least for a while, charity increased. Arrogant speech decreased. Public displays softened. Fear of sudden reversal lingered in memory. But human nature is forgetful. Generations pass. Stories become distant. Lessons weaken. And new Qaruns emerge in every era. That is why the story was preserved in Revelation. Not as folklore, not as legend, but as warning. It speaks beyond time. It speaks to modern cities, to financial capitals, to technology empires, to individuals climbing ladders of influence. It asks a question that echoes across centuries. When success comes, and it will come in different forms, what will you say? Will you say, "This is entirely mine"? Or will you say, "This is a trust"? The difference between those two statements determines direction. Qarun chose self-credit. He erased dependence, and the correction was irreversible. But the story does not end with destruction. It ends with guidance. The Qur'an concludes its narrative by stating that the hereafter is reserved for those who do not seek superiority or corruption on oath. That statement reframes ambition entirely. Ambition is not forbidden. Superiority is. Achievement is not condemned. Arrogance is. Growth is not sinful. Corruption is. The distinction is subtle, but life-defining. The empty ground where Qarun once stood became more powerful than the palace had ever been, because absence spoke louder than display. Silence carried more weight than spectacle, and the earth itself had delivered the sermon. Slow orchestral swell, then gentle fade. The rise had dazzled, the fall had shocked, the aftermath transformed, and the lesson remains. Nothing stands permanently except the will of God. Everything else, no matter how strong, how brilliant, how wealthy. Years passed. The city rebuilt its rhythm. Markets reopened fully. Laughter returned to the streets. Children who had once clutched their parents in fear grew older. Life, as it always does, continued. But something invisible had changed. There was an empty space in the collective memory, a space shaped like a palace that no longer existed. And every time someone walked past that stretch of earth, even if no visible mark remained, the story resurfaced. Qarun was gone. His gold was gone. His influence was gone. But the lesson remained alive. Time has a strange way of softening shock, but sharpening meaning. In the beginning, people spoke of the event with trembling voices. Later, they spoke of it thoughtfully. Eventually, they spoke of it as wisdom. The destruction was no longer just a moment of fear. It became a mirror for every generation that followed. Because Qarun is not just a man from the past. He is a pattern, a mindset, a possibility inside every human heart. The desire to rise, the hunger to achieve, the satisfaction of recognition, the pride of ownership. None of these are inherently evil. But when gratitude fades, when self-credit replaces acknowledgement of the Creator, when wealth becomes identity instead of responsibility, the pattern begins again. That is why this story survived centuries. It is not about ancient architecture. It is about the psychology of power. Across history, societies repeat the cycle. A person rises from humble beginnings. They gain wealth. They gain influence. They gain admiration. At first, they remember their dependence. They speak of gratitude. They speak of blessing. But slowly, subtly, the language changes. I work for this. I own this. I deserve this. And there is truth in effort. There is truth in discipline. There is truth in intelligence. But effort alone does not control outcomes. For every successful plan, countless unseen factors align. Health, timing, opportunity, protection from disaster. Every breath of sustained productivity is given, not owned. Qarun forgot that. And forgetting is more dangerous than ignorance. Ignorance can be corrected. Forgetting requires humility to restore. His story forces a question that transcends time. What is real ownership? You can possess wealth, but can you guarantee tomorrow? You can build structures, but can you secure the ground beneath them? You can gather followers, but can you command their loyalty beyond your power? Everything material is conditional. Conditional upon health. Conditional upon circumstance. Conditional upon divine permission. When that permission is withdrawn, collapse requires no effort. This is not a message of fear. It is a message of alignment. Alignment between success and humility, between achievement and gratitude, between growth and responsibility. The Quranic narrative of Qarun ends with a profound reminder. The home of the hereafter, we assign it to those who do not desire superiority upon the earth nor corruption. Not those who avoid success, not those who avoid wealth, but those who avoid superiority. Superiority is an internal disease. It whispers, "You are above. You are untouchable. You are self-made." It blinds the heart before it blinds the eyes. And once blindness settles, warning signs go unnoticed. Qarun was warned. He was reminded. He was advised to share, to be grateful, to seek the hereafter. But arrogance filters advice as insult. Correction feels like threat. Humility feels like weakness. Until reality intervenes. In the centuries after Qarun, kings rose and fell. Empires expanded and crumbled. Fortunes multiplied and vanished. Modern skylines now rise higher than anything Qarun could have imagined. Glass towers pierce the clouds. Digital wealth moves invisibly across continents in seconds. Influence spreads through screens rather than palaces. But the principle remains identical. Foundations are still temporary. Systems are still fragile. Power is still conditional. And the earth is still capable. Yet the deeper message of this story is not destruction. It is protection. Because those who internalize the lesson are protected from repeating it. When wealth comes and humility remains, it becomes blessing. When power comes and gratitude remains, it becomes service. When influence comes and accountability remains, it becomes responsibility. The difference between downfall and elevation is not possession. It is posture. Qarun's posture was self-exaltation. Musa's posture was submission. One was swallowed by the earth. The other is remembered as one of the greatest prophets in history. Two men, two paths, two outcomes. The story invites each listener to choose. And perhaps the most powerful part of this narrative is its subtle mercy. Qarun's destruction was public, visible, undeniable. But most corrections in life are quieter. A lost opportunity, a financial setback, a humbling failure, a reminder disguised as disappointment. These are smaller tremors, warnings before collapse, mercy before severity. The question is whether we recognize them or dismiss them, because arrogance does not appear suddenly. It grows quietly. It feeds on praise. It strengthens with comparison. It thrives when success goes unexamined. That is why reflection is protection. Gratitude is protection. Charity is protection. Remembering mortality is protection. Every graveyard is a reminder that ownership is temporary. Every economic crash is a reminder that stability is fragile. Every fallen empire is a reminder that dominance is brief. Qarun's story is not about ancient punishment. It is about eternal reality. Human beings rise. Human beings forget. Human beings are reminded. Some return to humility. Others resist until resistance is no longer possible. And so the narrative closes not with fear, but with clarity. The earth that swallowed Qarun still carries billions of footsteps today. It supports cities. It supports towers. It supports wealth beyond imagination. But beneath every step lies the same truth. We stand on mercy, not entitlement. The final image is not a destruction. It is of choice. A human being standing on solid ground, breathing, capable, blessed with opportunity, with resources, with knowledge, and facing a decision to claim ownership absolutely, or to acknowledge stewardship humbly. Because in the end, history does not remember how much a person owned. It remembers how they carried it. Did they carry wealth with gratitude? Or did wealth carry them into arrogance? Did power refine their character? Or distort it? Qarun's palace disappeared, but the moral architecture of his story stands firm. It stands in scripture. It stands in memory. It stands as warning and guidance simultaneously. And it whispers across time. Rise, but remain humble. Build, but remain grateful. Achieve, but remember the source. Because everything above the ground is temporary, and the ground itself answers to a higher command.